advice given to you on air with your doctor who knows you better. Neither the doctors nor Radio Al Ansar will be held responsible for any ill health caused by the advice given on Radio Al Ansar.
I don't need no reason. You provide the live broadcast from Radio Al Ansar, Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM. Lives. We do not know where we're supposed to be. What we're supposed to need. You took the time to teach us so that they don't just reach us, and you know we're great. Ya Rasulullah, Ya Look up to the best of the men, and I'm working on the test to the end. By following the message he sent, and try turning these lessons into action. Though I pray for the day that I see you in my dreams. This is how we speak on your life. We was all in need of a guide, and the Lord you sent us. Muhammad ya Rasulullah.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our listeners on this chilly Saturday morning here in Pietermaritzburg. So we're on Radio Al Ansar 90.4 and Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM and around the world on www.alansar.org.za. You're connected to a 1 hour powerful medical pulse show with myself, Shabnam Ismail, capturing the heartbeat of our community. So today we are opening a conversation many avoid, but too many families live with substance abuse. It's not just headlines or someone else's problem. It's the family member dependent on alcohol, the teen vaping at school, the neighbor hooked on pethidine or painkillers. It touches our homes, our schools, our workplaces right here in KZN. But there's the truth we'll unpack today. Addiction is a health condition, not a moral failure. And where there's understanding, there's hope. Where there's community, there's recovery. So, over the next hour, we will talk causes, warning signs, real stories, and most importantly, where help is available. Because no one should walk this road alone. So today we're honored to have Dr. Lochandra Logan Naidoo joining us. We have connected with him and he's based out in the Johannesburg area. Dr. Naidoo, welcome to the Pulse Show. Dr. Naidoo, good morning. Can you hear us? And welcome to the Pulse Show. We're going to actually just reconnect shortly. We're going to have a quick breather and we're going to get Dr. Naidoo online and we'll be back in a flash. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Naidoo, can you hear me? She is playing in the background, eh?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Doc.
Okay.
Can I talk to him in the meantime? Just going to reconnect with this now, right? Doc, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's cutting off slightly every so often, but I can hear you. Okay.
Not a problem, Doc. We're just going to reconnect with you shortly. We're just going to fade out and then I'm just going to welcome you back on the show, okay?
That's fine.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, listeners. And today we're honored to have Dr. Lochandra Naidoo with us. And welcome to the Pulse Show, Dr. Naidoo.
Thank you, Sharma. We here.
So, listeners, Dr. Naidoo was born in 1961 in South Africa, and he's a highly accomplished medical professional with a career spanning several decades. He earned his medical degree from the University of Natal in 1983 and has been a dedicated family practitioner in Durban since 1985. So, Dr. Naidoo founded the Julo Specialist Addiction Treatment Facility in Merebank, inspired by his training at the Hazelden in the United States. He played a pivotal role in shaping addiction policies in South Africa, including drafting the National Detoxification Policy. He also served as the Central Drug Authority and was elected to represent South Africa at the United Nations, where he served as a president of the International Narcotic Control Board, advocating for a shift towards a health-centered approach to drug issues. So Dr. Naidoo's contribution to mental health and addiction treatment extend beyond policy and advocacy. He founded Healing Hills, specialist psychiatry hospital, and also developed innovative addiction management software. His extensive experience includes training healthcare practitioners, lecturing at the Nelson Mandela School of Medicine, and numerous international missions. So Dr. Naidoo's dedication to community work, obviously desegmentized addiction and mental health disorders, is evident through his involvement in various community initiatives. In addition to his professional achievements, Dr. Naidoo is a family man with a spouse and 3 accomplished children. His mission is to improve the human soul's quality and create a safer living space for all. So, Dr. Naidoo, let's dive straight in. Can you tell our listeners by explaining what is substance abuse disorder and what does it mean?
Okay, so thank you for the question. I'll just broaden the answer. Remember, in South Africa, we have the Substance Abuse and Prevention Act. So a lot of the treatment is surrounded around substance abuse. So when we start thinking about substances, we need to understand substance misuse, substance abuse, and addiction. There are 3 distinctively different conditions. Okay, so my training is around addiction medicine as a very broad perspective. But really what we're doing is we're treating people instead of treating diagnoses. So if you look at substance abuse, it's someone using a substance and using it not according to what it's prescribed. So we move past the general illicit drugs, like the drugs that people know on the street, to licit drugs. And under the licit drugs are things like alcohol, cannabis, currently smoking, and prescription medication. And we see a lot of that. And then, of course, the other condition that we see is substance misuse. People who've been prescribed medication who are not using it for the right indication or using it for their dosage. Also, a lot of, at the moment, we see and make a distinction between the patient with substance abuse and addiction. So addiction is actually, the patient profile is a bit different. Both may be using substances, but you'll find the patient with substance abuse is easier to treat with counseling sufficiently, but a patient with addiction, it needs beyond counseling. And we can talk about that during the show.
So, Dr. Naidoo, can you tell us what are the most common substances you see people struggling with at your facility right now?
Okay, number one is alcohol. Number two is cocaine, crack cocaine.
And how has the landscape of drug abuse in our community changed over the past 5 years?
Well, of course, I've been working for the last 30 years in addiction on the ground. Initially, it started with alcohol, Mandrax, those days, which is methadone. Okay, and then it moved on, and then heroin came onto the scene in the late 1990s as something called sugars, etc., and moved on. The purity improved over a period of time. People called it wonga. People mixed it with other drugs. And eventually we moved on to this wonga in capsules. And the capsules served a very important purpose because it became a vehicle that we could test other drugs. So heroin, I would just call it heroin, or the opioids, actually create a lot of dependency and addiction. So some patients may not be addicted to it, but they become very dependent on it, which means if they don't have it, they cannot function. So from heroin, it moved on. Purity increased and improved for the effects that patients were looking because they would develop intolerance. And then you start the advent of cocaine, then crack cocaine or rock, which is a form of cocaine that releases dopamine much quicker. It's also smoked. And then we're now seeing crystal methamphetamine, which is now becoming a drug of choice for many people. Cannabis, after cannabis legalization in South Africa, we see an increase of patients with cannabis abuse disorders, cannabis use disorders, patients with also psychosis, patient losing touch with reality. But the biggest problem with cannabis is something that people don't notice, is the problem with the cognitive effects, the amotivational syndrome, the personality changes, etc., the subtle things that cause learning disorders, etc., which you don't see. Okay. So really, alcohol has remained the number one cause of reason for admission. The other problem is cigarette smoking, tobacco. We know that it's the number one addiction in the world, number one chemical that causes the most amount of health effects. And sometimes I wonder, everyone worries about the drugs of abuse and the big drugs, but we don't wonder about the thing that's killing more people, which is tobacco. So at our facility, we're very sensitive around that, around conscious smoking, and around also ensuring that these patients are sufficiently motivated to be able to even consider stopping tobacco use.
So, Doc, tell us from a medical perspective what makes someone more vulnerable to addiction?
Okay, so we're talking now addiction specifically, okay? Or we're talking substance abuse. But maybe I'll just combine the answer and say really adverse childhood experiences. Initially, the work was done by one of the biggest insurance companies in the world around why do people develop substance abuse disorders, addiction disorders, chronic disease disorders, example, diabetes, etc., etc. And there was something that was found that adverse childhood experiences under the age of 10 make someone more susceptible. These experiences, initially, the research was done around abuse, which is like exposure to sexual, emotional, and physical abuse, neglect, which is physical or emotional neglect, or household dysfunction. Like, for example, if a mother is not treated properly, which means violently, physically, or emotionally, if there was substance use in the home, where there was separation of parents, where there was any mental health problem in the home, or there was any incarceration.
Of course, over the years, we've started to see much more than that. Sometimes the home itself is stable, but the environment outside the home is not stable, which means you walk out into certain communities, everything's fine at home, but people walk out, and every day they're walking out into a neighborhood which is bombarding them with a very different lifestyle. So we've gone past that now, and we look at other issues like global warming. For example, blackouts, electricity blackouts for children are used to have, when we were young, it was fine not to have lights outside your house or outside your street or in your home. You'd be able to manage. So that was the norm, and you adjusted. But the child of today is not used to that. So you have mass blackouts, you have a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, etc. These are the big problems. Then you have this whole culture of people who are in recovery. So you may have someone in a home who's in recovery, which means who stopped alcohol or drug. But it's very important to understand that they may be convinced that they stopped alcohol and drug, but that family is living in fear and anxiety every day, waiting for the person to come home and to check whether that person is using or not using. So now we're creating families with anxiety over many years, which are anxiety disorders later on. And the point I'm making there, it's not sufficient just for a person to stop alcohol and drug and think everyone's fine. And why is this happening? And why are people responding to him in a way that is not happy? So it's really a family involvement. Everyone needs to be healed. The patient is what I would call the identified person. But family their own issues. I mean, spouses also come from different families. Sometimes spouses are told, don't marry this boy or don't marry this girl. And but people go against all these issues. And when problems happen, there's a lot of pride, a lot of hesitancy to ask for help, etc. So we need to move away from the stigma. We need to be able to say this is a human condition. People enter, I use analogy, a simple analogy. Sometimes I would find the patient who uses alcohol versus the patient who uses heroin versus the patient who uses cannabis. And sometimes they tend to think that there are three different kind of people. And I use two analogies. Number one, if you're diabetic, you're diabetic. Whether you have biscuits or whether you have cake or whether you have Spaletta cream soda, you're still a diabetic. And it's the same with addiction disorders. You can be a person using alcohol or drug, etc. The condition is addiction. The substance is not the condition. And that's very important. Stopping the substance doesn't heal the condition. And the condition lays in wait for many years. And when patients go back, I'm not using the word relapse, when the patient goes back to use substance, you'll find that within 30 days, his use of substance far exceeds the amount that he used prior to stopping, which is really showing that the disease continues as a background disorder and that the disease needs to be healed. And stopping the substance is really not the goal of treatment. Okay, it's just the initial withdrawal management or detoxification. And then we can talk maybe when we have time about the difference between what is rehab, etc.
So, Doc, tell us, many people start with prescription medication. So how does that transition to addiction happening?
I think it's very important that when we prescribe medication as doctors, or as nowadays you find there are more people than doctors prescribing medication. You can buy medication on the street. People are not even examining patients. You have virtual doctors just prescribing medication. You have pharmacists prescribing. It's important to take a family history. And I think that's where the general practitioner, the family doctor is very important. Family history and your predisposition to addiction in the family. and and what medication you use. For example, if you look at the opium poppy, and the opium that comes out there is actually the source material for codeine. It's the source material for morphine. It's the source material for heroin. So it's the same substance, source material. Of course, you will have also pethidine, which is a laboratory-created opiate, which is a synthetic opiate. So you'd find that when you see a patient, when you decide that this patient has got pain, it's important to look at the cause of the pain and not just switch off the signal, which is give you a painkiller. And you have a whole range of painkillers. And I just have to go a little bit on the side and say, for example, there seems to be an abuse of what traditionally would be called a non-addictive painkiller, like what you would call an anti-inflammatory. And I find a lot of people are taking anti-inflammatory medication, but not recognizing that there's so much of damage can happen to your tummy, can happen to your kidney over a period of time. And so people think that if you don't use an opiate and use anti-inflammatory, it's better, but it's really not the right indication. And when we're looking at medication, it seems that simple, there's a level of care when we're treating pain. We need to start with the simplest analgesic and move up further. But there's also an important point I need to make. In patients with legitimate pain, like post-operative pain, we must not withhold opiates from these people. So we mustn't become opiophobes. We mustn't become people who say, oh, I cannot use an opiate. An opiate is indicated for certain conditions. And we find that in patients who have legitimate pain, they don't get dependent on opiate medication. But there are many people who take, South Africa is one of the countries that thrives on polypills. We combine 3 or 4 different medications into one pill. And there's good indication when you're using it for diabetes and hypertension. But in pain management, polypills really can be a danger. So sometimes you give patients a combination tablet or capsule for pain, and the patient gets some euphoria. And they continue using it for the euphoria in the absence of pain. Or they may find there's a little sedative effect there, and they continue using it for the sedation. And there's very rapid tolerance development in people who have addiction genetics or family history of addiction. Those patients, even though you can detox them, you can do withdrawal management, you can get them well, that memory, and this is so cardinal in addiction, the memory of the euphoria really needs a therapeutic intervention to be able to diffuse, because that memory can live for a long, long time in areas of the brain. For example, let's say someone used a certain substance as an experiment, just experimented in his teenage life, and he found a good euphoric effect, and maybe he had the good fortune of someone being able to say, hey, don't continue with this. Do you know that euphoric effect of that memory remains? And maybe years later, he has some trauma. This memory comes back and say, remember this? You took this? And he goes back and takes that. So I think we're going to have a little break at the moment. Maybe we'll come back and continue that.
So, listeners, today we stop whispering and start talking. We look at why people use drugs, how to spot the signs early, and what recovery actually looks like. No judgment, just facts, compassion, and solutions. So, let's take a quick advert break and stay tuned with us.
Something new every day. Radio Al-Ansar.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio-visual experience. Now available full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park 202 Brickhill Road, Port. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
It's our second anniversary, and Dawood Mega Boutique is celebrating 2 years of quality, value, and community. You're invited to join us for a wonderful, fun-full family day in store. Bring the kids along for a day pamphlets, in-store competitions, also some free giveaways, and delicious free tasters of your apps. We're rolling out never-to-be-repeated deals across the entire store. Plus, don't miss our urgent, unmissable, hourly specials on specific items. Once that hour is up, they're gone. Get unmatched value from our premium butcher, our fresh deli, crisp fruit and veg, and of course, our massive frozen food selections. It's your complete grocery destination all under one roof. Mark your calendars, bring the whole family down, and leave happy. Dawood Mega Boutique, 2 years of serving you with excellence, and we are just getting started.
Radio Al-Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM. Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM.
Doctors and guests on a medical files program will help you with any medical problems you have by giving you advice on air. However, they do not have your full medical history and they have not seen you. Please verify the advice given to you on air with your doctor who knows you better. Neither the doctors nor Radio Al-Ansar will be held responsible for any ill health caused by the advice given on Radio Al-Ansar.
ما يقال عندي بسم الله بك نبدأ في سلطان جسدي مع السكية عين وحدة مثل النحلة تسدي تبني شهدها فوق شهدها يا محمد سيدي صلى الله عليك نبدأ يا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم يا محمد سيدي صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم صل وسلم في حكم بك في بحور الغامضين يا محمد يا سيدي صلى الله عليك نبدأ يا محمد يا سيدي صلى الله عليك
And we're back, listeners. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this Saturday morning, Radio Al-Ansar 90.4 MP Marisburg, 105.6 FM. And around the world, we're on www.alansar.org.za. You're connected to the Pulse Show with myself, Shabnam Ismail, capturing the heartbeat of our community. So today we're talking substance abuse. 2 words that break families, derail dreams, and cost lives. Alcohol, drugs, prescription pills, they don't discriminate by age, race, or income. So welcome to Dr. Naidoo, and let's continue with the show. How are you, Dr. Naidoo?
I'm fine. Okay.
Wonderful. So, Dr. Naidoo, can you tell us what is the early warning signs that families and friends should look for? And if somebody suspects a loved one is struggling, what's the first step they should do to take action?
Yeah, I think we must avoid delaying getting some help. Now, traditionally in our country, everyone with a substance abuse or addiction problem, the next word in people's mind is rehab. And my training is in addiction, which means I don't rehabilitate everyone. and treat people who use substances even before they become abusers, misusers, or patient addiction. So we've created, and this is a model that almost an international model for practitioners working in addiction, which means you got to have things like office-based consultations. So if you find that someone's using substances and you and you suspect it because, for example, the person may have deterioration in school functioning, patient may show isolation, patient may have mood disorders, etc. It's important not to be able to just blame the substance and to have an open mind and to be able to have some sort of consultation to be able to chat around this issue. Because the person may be using the substance as a solution. For example, we know that people say that I need to use cannabis before I write an exam, or I need to use cannabis to concentrate. You know, what seems to be a solution eventually makes it a dependency and worsens this problem. So you would find that people would say, I don't have a drug problem. And it's important to be able to say that if someone is using a substance, it doesn't mean he's got a substance problem. And because once you start doing that, then the person involved becomes defensive. And once you have defensiveness, and they bring him to a doctor or wherever for an assessment, there's a lot of interplay that happens that may damage that kind of conversation and consultation. So we've created something called One Consult, which is an open, almost an hour consultation with the patient and any other concerned person to be able to explore the person's life and see where the use of substances has come in and what role it plays, and is there any alternative mechanisms. The second thing we do is a lot of people who are using substances are either put into facilities, either in the addiction field or in other mental health facilities, and are given diagnoses, and these diagnoses last for life. You know, so it's important that before we put patients into treatment, we should have something or some opportunity to be able to assess these patients, to be able to get a second opinion before these things are done. For example, you may have a patient who may be using substances, who may be admitted to a psychiatry hospital and be called bipolar disorder, or be called depression or anxiety or psychosis, etc. And these may be completely legitimate, but sometimes patients need to be detoxified or have withdrawal management and to be reassessed. And you would find that some of these conditions may be easily treated rather than becoming chronic for the patient. We find that a lot of patients, once they leave treatment also, need to also be managed as an outpatient, either in support systems, continuum care, community-based treatment, or with the treating practitioners, the psychiatrist, or addiction doctor, or psychologist, whatever. Then you'll find that some patients develop some form of extinction, and they get well and they're able to function, etc. And they don't need to have such intense care. So what I'm saying is, everyone who uses a substance, I don't think we should call them an addict, or we shouldn't call them substance abuse. We should be able to be more circumspect and to be able to be, I think, compassionate, to be able to understand the person. Stigmatizing or being able to scold someone or be able to label someone just actually isolates them. And I don't think that's it's really fair on the person, because I think a lot of people are able to manage the substances and to be able to stop substances when they get alternate ways. So let's think of it this way. Why would someone use a substance? And I'm not saying why would someone be an addict or an abuser, but why would someone use a substance? because he's getting some secondary gain. And I'll use a very simple example. If you're unable to dance and someone gives you some alcohol, you might dance. And the problem is you don't have confidence, or maybe you don't have dancing technique. So when you use a substance, it removes the ability to have shame, and it allows you to overcome the poor confidence, and you're able to dance. So what would the treatment be? I think the treatment would be some confidence building to dancing school, and you might not need the alcohol. And the point is, if you don't get into conversations, simple things like this can become, oh, you're an alcoholic, or, that kind of issue. And remember, alcoholic is a colloquial term. It's not a medical diagnosis, but it's used in that kind of way. Then we start looking at people who come to us. And I say to them, when you come to us in a bus. Maybe you came in an alcohol bus or a drug bus, or maybe you came in a prescription bus. But that's not just the bus. The bus brought you and left you at us. And the reason you came to us, do you want to stop your substances? And I'll tell you, most of the patients say yes. And I'll say, why? Because it's always giving you some positive reinforcement. It's making you feel good. I mean, a lot of people use substances to escape reality. They can't handle certain things, so they escape reality. The problem is, once they escape reality, they avoid responsibility. So you need someone on the ground who's looking after the food, water, and shelter while this person has escaped reality. And every so often they come back to earth and then they deny consequences. And then stopping substances doesn't fix consequences. So you have to look at this dynamic and be able to understand from for every different patient, there's a different mechanism that needs to be managed. So we're looking at things like office-based consultations, second opinion consultations, full assessments of people. But by no means are we saying we're a psychologist, social worker, or anyone else. So therefore, we work in a team. So at these initial assessments, if a patient wants to proceed with us, they may be able to have office-based consultations, etc. But I still think rehabilitation is very, very important. It's so unfortunate that rehabilitation is only reserved for people with substance abuse. And rehabilitation does not have to always happen in a rehabilitation facility, which means a facility or a building, a rehabilitation center, is not the only place you can do rehabilitation. If families are really involved, the home itself could be a space where people are able to look at rehabilitation principles. So what makes people need to be admitted to treatment? Number one, withdrawal management. Yes. Detoxification. Yes. What do these words mean? Withdrawal management is very easy to understand. It's the word we use internationally. Okay. So person was used to have brain function with a certain substance. If the substance is not there anymore, that brain will not function well. And so we need to manage those symptoms until the brain is able to stabilize and function well. But it's not only the brain, because all the organs get affected. We've seen an increased number of patients with cardiac consequences or heart consequences due to substance use. So when we see patients, we
Dr.
assess
Naidoo?
that also. Yes, ma'am.
Let's have a short breather. We often hear about the damage, and yes, it's real. But today we're also talking about the comeback and about how the brain can heal. So, about how families rebuild, about asking for help. And actually, the stronger thing, what we can do is supporting somebody to obviously get back on their feet. So, listeners, grab a cuppa, don't go anywhere, and we'll catch up just after this ad break.
Yeah.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM.
For over 5 decades, Sunfoil has nurtured a legacy rooted from our land. From a sunflower seed grown with goodness and love, crafted through excellence, precision, and care. Proudly South African and the only 100% pure sunflower oil endorsed as a diamond partner by the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Cook with confidence, serving the best to the people you love, from one dish to the next. Sunfoil, the heart of good cooking.
Every day, thousands go to bed hungry, but you can change that. With just 10 Rand, you can provide a loaf of bread. This bread is more than just a donation, it is a lifeline for so many families in need. Be part of the Al-Ansar Outreach Slice of Life drive today. Call Outreach on 031 208 1601 and make a difference, one loaf at a time.
Doctors and guests on a medical files program will help you with any medical problems you have by giving you advice on air. However, they do not have your full medical history and they have not seen you. Please verify the advice given to you on air with your doctor who knows you better. Neither the doctors nor Radio Al-Ansar will be held responsible for any ill health caused by the advice given on Radio Al-Ansar.
Did you look at the night, see the light of the moon? Did you look at the sun, giving you warmth? Did you look at the sky? Are you falling in love? It's from the Creator, you can't get enough. He is everywhere, and He knows we stare. Yes, He knows. Yes, He knows. He knows. You've got the world in your hands. He's the one who we're thanking for life. He is a Rahman. He is a Rahman. See the birds how they fly, feel the tears when you cry. He's the one who gives everything. He'll never leave you behind. 'Cause He's the one that always makes things better. And He's the one that always lives forever. He's everywhere. He knows we stay. Yes, He knows. Yes, He knows. You've got the world in your hands. You gotta thank Him for life.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to Radio Ansar. We are 90.4 Durban, MPT Marisburg, 105.6 FM. And today's topic is heavy but necessary: substance abuse and addiction. So addiction is a health condition, not a moral failure. And where there is understanding, there is hope. And where there is community, there is recovery. So Dr. Naidoo, can you tell our listeners what's the most effective way to prevent substance abuse? Like, we obviously tapping into the community. In terms of advice, how should the parents talk to kids about drugs and alcohol? And what role can our schools, our religious centers, and community do to obviously play a role with prevention?
Okay. Let's look at the business model that most drug merchants use. The business model is they try to be father to the patients. So the relationship between a father and a child is paramount in protecting someone from substance use disorder. That's very important to understand. Now, fathering can be the patient's own father or other organizations. For example, in our school system at the moment, we tend to have less male educators than female educators. And the broader South African context, the 60.5% of our homes don't have fathers. So we have absent fathers. We have children going to school who are largely being treated by lady or female educators. Where are these children learning and where are they getting that protection? So outside the schoolyards, we find people selling drugs, people actually even reducing the price of drugs just to get people, to start. So I think that's one thing, getting more involved in children's lives. And remember, time is the most important thing. It's not just about giving money but time, spend time, not just sitting and watching a movie together, but engaging. I think that's the number one. For me, that's the number one protector. Number two is how we manage our homes. Okay, we must make our homes attractive enough for our children to want to be with us rather than be outside the home. Because outside the home, today in modern day South Africa, is very dangerous. Religious organizations, etc., play a very important part because they're part of the extended community. Now, there is the situation where we have many support systems out there. Now, remember, in the support systems and support groups, these are non-intimate relationships. So people do very well in non-intimate relationships. So for example, I might go to a support group on this or that, and I have really great relationships with people not my family. But as soon as I come home, I don't know how to function in intimacy relationships. And so addiction is a problem of intimacy relationships. And that's why intimate skills development is very important as you grow up. And where do children get the intimacy skills is from how the parents interact with each other. So I think that's it's very important to be able to look at. Education in the family, in the community is very important. And I think everyone can get involved in that, whether you're a medical person, non-medical person, etc., religious organizations, schools, etc. One thing that's been missing from schools is proper early childhood education. I think early childhood education is so important in preventing this problem. And it's building the resilience of the brain. The resilience of the brain, and the development of what we call the fibers that come from the balance areas to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is around, I would just call it common sense area, not so much intellect, the common sense area. That resilience is important. And I find that people who have had early childhood education, who may have diverted and used substances or been addicted, they do much better in treatment outcomes than people who haven't had that early childhood education. And it's always the best investment with the child. It's no use investing in matric. In matric, you just actually put in some icing on a cake that's not well cooked. So I think that's very important to be able to do that. And I think national policy is moving a lot of funding from social development into early childhood education. And I think that's important and to be able to do.
Dr. Naidoo, we'll revisit this topic because there's so much more that we can unpack. But as we wrap up today's discussion on substance abuse and addiction, I want to thank you and your expertise and insights with us. Doctor, how can our community get in touch with you, and where is your organization based in KZN?
Okay, so we established in 1995 the first addiction private unit in the country, and especially more importantly, the first unit for people in color. Wood color, so wood color on the skin, actually, because all my patients are very colorful. So we're in Merebank, in Durban. We grew from a 4-bed unit into a 40 unit over the last 30 odd years, a multidisciplinary team, etc. So people can phone and they can decide what type of intervention they would like, depending on readiness for change. So we always say, leave no one behind. If you don't want to stop substances, it doesn't mean you don't have to have a conversation. But if you really want to change your life and you want to prevent this from moving to the next generation in your family, then great intervention. And all our patients who come in with us are given a lifelong support system. And that's for my wife and myself is our contribution to society called Origins to Infinity, where they have webinars every Saturday. They have every 3 weeks we have family workshops training the families of our patients, because it's no use just healing one person. It's about saving the children. I think that's the most important thing, and I think that's the reason that we do this work, to save the next generation. Thank you very much
And
for having me today.
thank you so much, Doc. And that's our mission and vision here with the Pulse Show. And your knowledge has been totally invaluable. And I thank you for all the work that your team does out to try and give someone the gift of life. As we close today's show, I want to leave you with this. Addiction is a disease, not a disgrace. If you heard something today that hit close to home for you or someone you love, please don't carry it alone. Help exists. Talk to a medical profession. Even get in touch with Dr. Naidoo and his amazing team with such amazing work they're doing out there. To our listeners, shukran for tuning in today's Pulse Show. Remember, you are not broken, you are not alone, and it's never too late to start again. A massive shout out to every comrades runner who's towing the line this weekend. Run with heart, run with pride, and run safe. Jazakallah to the technical team for connecting us with the community. And from my side, I'll catch you again next Saturday, inshallah. Jazakallah for listening in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Medical Files program will help you with any medical problems you have by giving you advice on air. However, they do not have your full medical history and they have not seen you. Please verify the advice given to you